The sun was already high when the disaster struck, blazing down on the roadside like it wanted to set the entire world on fire. Cars rushed past with the indifference of city life, and the dusty air shimmered in waves that distorted everything. It was in that suffocating heat that Selina Rourke stood beside her old silver sedan, staring at the hood that had just released a puff of smoke like a final sigh before death. Sweat rolled down her forehead, her hands trembled with panic, and her heart beat too loudly as she wondered why everything always seemed to break when she needed stability the most. But nothing prepared her for the moment a tall figure stepped out from a nearby workshop, wiping grease from his hands, walking toward her with a steady calmness that cut through the chaos like a quiet miracle. Selina had no idea that this man, looking like an ordinary mechanic in a faded navy shirt and work-stained jeans, was actually the owner and CEO of the largest auto services corporation in the city, a man whose name, Rylan Cade, was printed in newspapers and business magazines. She only saw a stranger with kind eyes, and she didn't know yet that within the next few hours she would ask him a question that would change both of their lives forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the way unexpected people can change everything, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kind Wave right now. Your support keeps these stories alive. Everything that morning had gone wrong for Selina. Her presentation for the community education fundraiser had been moved up unexpectedly, forcing her to rush. Her younger brother, Mason, had called her in tears because his scholarship meeting had been delayed again. Bills were piling up at home like an unspoken accusation. The last thing she needed was a broken car on a day when her wealthy, condescending ex-boyfriend, Orion Hale, would also be at the event. He was one of the donors, a man who had made her feel small for years until she had finally found the courage to leave. The problem was that Orion loved to talk, loved to brag, and loved to humiliate her subtly in public. And today, without meaning to, she was walking straight into a room where he would shine while she looked like the girl who never quite managed to get her life together. Rylan approached with an easy step, the sun catching on his dark hair, his eyes steady and observant. Although he was in disguise, because he frequently visited his branches pretending to be a normal employee to understand real issues, he carried himself with a natural confidence that didn't match his clothes. When he asked her what happened, Selina explained as best she could while trying not to sound as stressed as she felt. She expected annoyance, maybe impatience, but instead he listened like her words mattered, like her struggles were worth hearing. He checked her car carefully, taking his time, and eventually told her the engine had suffered a failure that would take hours to repair. Panic returned instantly because she needed to be across town in less than an hour. Rylan saw it clearly. The way she clasped her hands together, the way her breathing tightened, the way her eyes flickered with that quiet desperation people get when they try to pretend they're fine. Something inside him softened. He didn't know who she was, but he sensed her day was about to collapse on top of her, and the last thing he wanted was to let that happen. So he offered her a ride. She hesitated at first, trusting strangers wasn't something she usually did, but something in his presence felt genuine, grounded, something she had rarely felt even with people she knew for years. So she said yes. The drive across the city felt strangely peaceful. Rylan had a calmness that filled the car like cool air in summer. Selina found herself talking more than she expected, about her fundraising job, her brother's dreams, her desire to prove she could rebuild her life after ending a long toxic relationship. Rylan didn't speak about himself, only asked questions that made it easier for her to talk. He seemed to understand without judgment, and it made her chest feel a little lighter. When they arrived at the community center, Selina froze as soon as she stepped out. Orion was there already, dressed in crisp daytime business attire, laughing with donors. He turned, spotted her, and his eyes glinted with the smugness she recognized too well. Within seconds he strode over with the confidence of a man who always believed he was in control. Selina felt her stomach twist. She remembered all the times he made her feel like a burden, like someone not worth staying with, like someone whose dreams were fragile things he could break just by speaking. She stepped backward instinctively, and in the middle of that panic, she whispered to Rylan without thinking, her voice trembling, her breath barely forming the words. She asked if he could pretend to be her boyfriend, just for today, just long enough to protect her dignity, just long enough to stop Orion from turning this event into another chance to belittle her. The question startled Rylan, not because he minded, but because of how fragile her voice sounded when she asked. He looked at Orion, then at Selena, at the way she tried to straighten herself even though her hands trembled. Something in him made the decision instantly. He nodded, and the relief that washed over her softened her entire face. Walking beside her, he transformed. His posture straightened, his steps matched hers, and there was a protective steadiness in the way he carried himself. Selena felt the shift immediately, like she wasn't walking alone anymore. When Orion asked who he was, Rylan introduced himself in a gentle but firm tone that left no room for mockery. Orion's smile faltered slightly, clearly not expecting her to show up with someone who looked confident and grounded. For once, Selena wasn't shrinking. For once, she felt safe throughout the event. Rylan stayed by her side, not hovering or pretending too hard, but simply being present in the quiet, reassuring way that made her shoulders relax. Selena delivered her presentation beautifully, fueled by the confidence of knowing someone believed she mattered. Her voice didn't shake, her ideas were clear, and even Orion couldn't interrupt or undermine her. When the donors applauded, she almost cried, not because she was relieved, but because she finally felt like she was capable of rebuilding her life. In the soft brightness of the afternoon, she stepped outside to breathe, and Rylan followed to check on her. She thanked him sincerely, but she didn't know how to express the deeper gratitude she felt. To her surprise, Rylan admitted that he admired her strength, that she had more courage than she realized. It stunned her that someone who barely knew her could see her so clearly. But what shocked her more was when Orion came outside, overhearing a piece of their conversation, and made a snide remark about her being dramatic. Before she could speak, Rylan took a step forward, not aggressively but with a calm firmness that silenced the air around them. He told Orion that respect wasn't optional, that Selena deserved far better than anyone who dismissed her. She stared at Rylan in awe because no one had ever defended her like that, not even people she trusted for years. Orion walked away irritated, and the last remnants of Selena's old fears seemed to walk away with him. As they waited for her car to be repaired, Selena and Rylan spent the rest of the afternoon together at a nearby park under the soft daytime shade of tall trees, where the breeze finally felt gentle and forgiving. She learned that he visited different workshops to understand the struggles of employees, but he still didn't reveal he was the CEO. Instead, he listened as she talked about her past and her hopes for the future. In return, he shared small pieces of his own life, the pressure of running a business, the expectations placed on him, the loneliness that came from people treating him differently because of his title. He didn't say he was wealthy. He didn't boast. He simply existed beside her like a man searching for connection just as much as she was. By the time they returned to the auto shop, her car was ready, and she expected the moment to end there, like a brief kindness that life offered once before slipping away. But the mechanic who recognized Rylan greeted him respectfully and accidentally called him sir, revealing his identity. Selena stopped, stunned. The man she thought was a simple mechanic was actually the owner of an entire chain of auto centers, a CEO whose reputation she had heard about in news segments. Embarrassment and confusion raced through her, but before she could speak, Rylan explained gently that he wasn't pretending to deceive her, he simply wanted to be treated like a normal human being and to understand real struggles at ground level. And today, helping her wasn't part of his job, it was something he genuinely wanted to do. Selena felt her breath soften, her confusion melting into something warm and unexpected. She realized he had shown her kindness not because of status but because of character. And that was worth more than anything she could have imagined. As she prepared to leave, Rylan hesitated, and for the first time he seemed nervous. He told her he didn't want the day to end like a simple favor between strangers. He wanted to see her again, not to play a role, not to pretend anything, but to start something real if she was willing. Selena felt her heart swell with something tender and unfamiliar, a mixture of hope and disbelief. She agreed softly, realizing that sometimes life broke things not to hurt us, but to lead us to something better. If this story touched your heart in any way, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kind Wave. Your engagement helps us bring